Divorce papers? The words hung in the air of the courthouse hallway, heavy and final. The manila folder in my trembling hands contained more than just legal documents. It held the dissolution of a 30-year marriage, the end of what I once thought was unbreakable. My name is Catherine Miller, Kathy DeMost, and at 54, I never imagined standing here, my life's certainties crumbling around me like a house of cards. Judge Brennan would see us in 20 minutes, and Tom hadn't even shown up yet. Typical. After 30 years together, he couldn't even be bothered to arrive on time for the ending of our marriage. The polished marble floors of the county courthouse reflected the harsh fluorescent lights, making everything feel too bright, too exposed. Outside, sheets of November rain lashed against the windows, matching my internal turmoil. I'd chosen my outfit carefully this morning, charcoal gray suit, the one I'd worn to my biggest client presentation last year when I'd secured the hospital redesign contract. Power armor. My friend Lisa squeezed my shoulder, her journalist's eyes scanning the hallway. At 55, with her silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a practical bun, she looked every bit the veteran reporter she was. We'd met in college art class, before she switched to journalism, and I committed fully to design. 30 years of friendship had seen us through career struggles, relationship disasters, and now, this. Are you sure about this, Kathy? 30 years is a long time, she asked, though we both knew the question was merely a formality at this point. I stared at the folder, feeling the weight of 3 decades pressing against my fingers. What choice do I have? He emptied our accounts. 30 years of savings gone. My voice didn't crack. I'd been rehearsing this steadiness for weeks. All those years I spent building my business, making something from nothing, and he took it to set up his new life with a woman half my age. Lisa's mouth tightened. His loss. Literally and figuratively. Through the courthouse window, I could see my mother's silver Lexus pulling into the parking lot. Eleanor Miller, still perfectly coiffed at 78, her posture ramrod straight as she guided my increasingly frail father toward the entrance. They hadn't spoken to me in months. Not since I'd exposed their decades of financial deceit. Not since I'd brought their perfect FOD crashing down. I hadn't expected them to come today. Their own court appearance, for the housing violations and will fraud, wasn't scheduled until next week. But here they were, no doubt ready to witness what they consider another of my failures. Never mind that Tom's infidelity had nothing to do with me, or that their own legal troubles were entirely self-inflicted. Mrs. Miller? The clerk appeared at my elbow. Judge Brennan can see you now. As I gathered my belongings, a text message flashed on my phone. My cousin Megan, the golden child, the family favorite. How could you do this to everyone? Haven't you destroyed enough? I silenced my phone and straightened my shoulders. My divorce was the least of my family's worries, but Megan had always been talented at making everything about herself. Sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings. And sometimes, the house of cards needs to fall for something stronger to be built. Lisa slipped her arm through mine as we headed toward the courtroom. Ready? I've been ready for 30 years, I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. I just didn't know it until now. Morning of discovery, 3 months earlier, the sold sign stabbed into the front lawn of my condominium cut deeper than any knife. I blinked hard, the afternoon sun suddenly too bright, my grocery bags suddenly too heavy. The organic vegetables I'd splurged on, a small celebration for landing the medical campus design contract, seemed to mock me now. For 3 years, I'd been renting this place from my mother, paying market rate, maintaining it meticulously, with the verbal agreement that when I'd saved enough for a down payment, it would be mine. The front door's freshly painted navy blue trim, a weekend project I'd completed just last month, now seemed pointless. The herb garden I'd carefully cultivated along the walkway, rosemary, thyme, and mint that had fed me through lean months when clients paid late, would soon be someone else's. Or, more likely, dug up and discarded as too old-fashioned. Mother had always criticized my quaint gardening hobby. Surprise? Cousin. The sickeningly sweet voice froze me in place. Megan stood at the edge of my driveway, designer purse swinging from her arm, perfect smile gleaming beneath expensive sunglasses. At 48, she looked like she was trying desperately to cling to 35, expertly applied makeup, strategically placed Botox, and clothing just a touch too youthful for her position as a bank branch manager. Her highlighted blonde hair, a bottle approximation of the natural color I'd been blessed with, caught the sunlight as she flipped it over her shoulder. Guess who just bought her first home? She gestured dramatically toward my condo, with perfectly manicured hands. My grocery bag slipped from nerveless fingers, oranges rolling across the driveway like escaping prisoners. What are you talking about? Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Robert gave me such an amazing deal. I mean, they practically gifted it to me. She twirled what used to be my keys around her manicured finger. I can't wait to renovate. This place needs so much work. I stared at her, unable to process the casual cruelty of the moment. 3 years I'd lived here. 3 years of paying every bill on time, of renovating and improving, of believing my mother's promise that this place would eventually be mine. They told me I was going to buy this place, I said finally, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. We had an agreement. Megan's smile didn't falter, but a calculating gleam entered her eyes. Oh, well, Aunt Eleanor didn't mention that. She just said they'd been holding onto it as an investment property, and since I got my promotion. She shrugged delicately. Family helps family, right? I barely heard the rest of her gloating. My feet carried me automatically to my car, my mind a blanket of static. The spilled groceries remained on the driveway, forgotten. As I fumbled with my keys, I glimpsed Megan taking a selfie in front of the sold sign, no doubt for her meticulously curated Instagram feed where her life always appeared perfect. Catherine, art isn't a real career. Look at your cousin. She's climbing the ranks at the bank. That's stability. My mother's voice from 20 years ago echoed in my head as I drove the 3 blocks to my parents' colonial-style home, its basement windows glowing with the illegal apartment's lights, their precious secret income source for the past 15 years. The perfectly maintained exterior of their house, the pristine white siding, the precisely trimmed hedges, the wrought iron house number that my father polished monthly, all of it a fraud. Just like their respectability, their supposed moral standing in the community. A beautiful shell concealing a rotten core. My mother opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting for me. At 78, Eleanor Miller remained a striking woman, tall and slender, with silver hair always styled in an elegant bob, her clothing expensive but understated. The kind of woman who inspired both admiration and intimidation at country club luncheons. Today she wore a pale blue cashmere sweater and tailored gray slacks, as if she were expecting company far more important than her only daughter. I assumed you'd come, she said, stepping aside. Your father's in his study. The house smelled like coffee and betrayal. Flashback 20 years earlier. Mom, this is a major client. They want my designs for their entire medical campus. I was 34, standing in this same living room, practically vibrating with excitement. After years of struggling to establish my graphic design business, I finally landed a contract that would put me on the map. 6 figures, with potential for ongoing work. Validation that all my hard work, all those nights I'd spent hunched over my drawing table while other people my age were building families or climbing corporate ladders, had been worth it. That's nice, dear, Mom said, barely looking up from her real estate magazine. Her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, creating a barrier between us as effective as a steel wall. But does it come with benefits? Megan just got promoted to assistant manager. Full health coverage, dental, 401k. I took a deep breath, fighting against the familiar deflation that always accompanied these conversations. My business is growing. I've doubled my income this year alone. I've hired 2 junior designers. I'm building something substantial. Unstable income, she corrected, turning a glossy page featuring luxury properties. No safety net. No retirement plan. No future security. Dad peered over his newspaper briefly, a flash of pride in his eyes that he quickly concealed when Mom glanced his way. At 60, he'd already begun his slow retreat from confrontation, his spine gradually softening until he became the shadow man he was today, present in body but absent in conviction. Your art has always been lovely, Catherine, he offered weakly. Mom scoffed. Art doesn't pay bills, Robert. Not reliably. Catherine needs to think about her future. At her age, she should be settled, not chasing creative whims. I was 34, with a thriving business and a growing client list. When would I be settled enough in her eyes? The contract includes a substantial kill fee if they terminate early, I said, trying a different angle. And I'm putting 20% of every payment into a SEP IRA. I'm planning for the future, Mom. Planning, she repeated dismissively. Megan has achieved. There's a difference. That evening, as I drove home, I passed the very condominium complex where I would eventually live. A for sale sign stood in front of one unit, a corner property with good natural light and a small garden space. I stopped to write down the number. Dream momentarily kindled. Perhaps owning property would finally prove to my mother that my career was legitimate, that I wasn't just playing at being a professional. 2 days later, I learned Mom had purchased it as an investment property. She'd rent it to me someday, she said. Eventually let me buy it when I was more established. I was 34 years old with a successful business, and still not established enough in my mother's eyes. At my parents' house present, Dad wouldn't meet my eyes when I burst into his study, suddenly feeling 16 again, pleading my case to deaf ears. His once commanding presence had diminished over the years, shoulders hunched over his desk as if bearing an invisible weight. At 80, Robert Miller was a shell of the successful corporate executive he'd once been, his authority in the household long since ceded to my mother. The study, once his domain, had become merely another stage for my mother's decorating vision. The hunting prints he loved replaced by bland landscapes she deemed more appropriate, his beloved leather armchair reupholstered in a fabric that matched her new color scheme. Even here, he'd surrendered. How could you sell my home without telling me? My voice cracked. I live there. I've been paying rent for 3 years. I've improved the property. We had an agreement. Dad shuffled papers on his desk, financial statements, I noticed, all showing concerning negative balances. Catherine, it's complicated. Family helps family, Mom said, perching on Dad's desk like a perfectly groomed hawk. She crossed her ankles primly, the gesture somehow managing to convey both propriety and dominance. Megan needed a starter home, and she has such potential with her new promotion at the bank. I've been paying rent for 3 years. We had an agreement. I was saving for the down payment. You promised me. Nothing was in writing, Dad mumbled, shuffling papers. Francis. Mom snapped. Let me handle this. Dad flinched at the tone, his eyes dropping instantly back to his papers. The momentary display of spine collapsing under my mother's practiced glare. She turned to me, face carved from ice. You'll have 30 days to vacate. Megan's being very generous about the timeline. Generous? I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. Like you were generous letting me believe I had a future there? Like you were generous every time you undermined my career while propping up Megan's? Don't be dramatic, Catherine. You're 54 years old. It's time you learned that nothing in life is guaranteed. She straightened an already perfectly aligned paper on Dad's desk. Besides, you should be grateful. The property values have increased. We were able to sell to Megan for much more than we paid. So you profited from breaking your promise to me? We made a sound business decision, Mom corrected. As I've tried to teach you countless times. Sentiment doesn't belong in financial matters. I stared at them, really stared. Mom, perfectly coy and cold as always. Dad, hiding behind his papers like a coward. The basement door slightly ajar, where their tenant probably heard everything. You're right, I said quietly. Nothing is guaranteed. Not property. Not promises. Not even family loyalty. Mom's expression flickered, just for a moment, before her mask of control reasserted itself. Don't be childish, Catherine. This is business. No, Mother. This is betrayal. And you've taught me that lesson perfectly. That night, after hours of angry packing and ignored calls from Megan about paint samples, I sat in my soon-to-be former living room. The herb garden I'd carefully cultivated outside the kitchen window would be torn out within weeks. The garden that had fed me through lean months when clients paid late. I opened my laptop to the city's housing department website. The anonymous complaint form was simple enough to fill out. I hesitated for just a moment, thinking about consequences. What it would mean for my parents, for their finances, for our already strained relationship. Then memories flooded me, each one adding fuel to my simmering rage. Catherine, don't be difficult. Megan needs the computer for college applications. You just draw all day. You can use the library computers. Christmas, 1990. I'd received self-help books about finding real work, while Megan got a brand new MacBook. Megan has real potential in art. You should encourage her, Catherine, instead of being jealous of her natural talent. This, after Megan had copied my portfolio concept for her community college application, receiving more praise for the imitation than I had for the original. We paid for Megan's tuition because banking has a future. Art school would have been a waste for you. My college fund, diverted to my cousin. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through design school, while Megan dropped out after 2 years, her education fully funded by my parents. Megan's wedding is costing us a fortune, but it's worth it to see her happy. You understand why we can't help with your business expansion loan, don't you? This when I was desperate to secure larger studio space for my growing design firm. I'd taken out high-interest loans instead, working 7-day weeks for years to pay them off. My fingers flew across the keyboard, detailing the illegal basement apartment, the unauthorized electrical work, the multiple building code violations I'd noticed over the years. I included dates, descriptions, even the name of the current tenant, a young paralegal named Marcus who paid below market rent in cash. No lease, no rights, no protections. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Megan's thinking of painting the living room sage green. You always did make questionable color choices. The casual cruelty, the dismissal of even my professional expertise in design, it was the final straw. I hit submit on the complaint form. Within seconds, an automated email arrived. Inspector Davis will contact you within 24 hours to discuss your report. Another text from Mom. Don't forget to leave the spare keys when you go. Megan needs them for the contractor. I smiled for the first time that day, typing my phone number into the contact information field. The inspector would need someone to let them in, after all, someone who knew exactly where to look. Of course, Mom, I texted back. I wouldn't want to make things difficult for family. Plotting with Lisa 2 days later. Remember when you won that art competition? The New England Designer of the Year? Lisa asked, helping me pack my books into boxes. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of what would soon be Megan's living room, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like my unsettled thoughts. Lisa's presence was a comfort. We'd been friends since college, weathering career struggles and relationship disasters together for over 30 years. While I'd pursued design, she'd built a formidable reputation as an investigative journalist, specializing in exposing corporate malfeasance. Her innate sense of justice and sharp eye for deception had served her well professionally and made her the perfect ally now. And my mother just said, "That's nice," while making a huge deal about Megan's participation trophy in some bank leadership seminar. I muttered, wrapping a photo frame in bubble wrap. It contained my first professional award, a regional recognition that had opened doors early in my career. First place in a competition with over 500 entrants versus a participation certificate at a corporate weekend retreat. But Megan had real potential. Lisa mimicked my mother's crisp, dismissive tone perfectly. You know what Mom told me when I showed her the magazine feature on my hospital redesign project last year? Megan just closed $1 million commercial loan. That's real impact. I secured the bubble wrap with tape, perhaps more aggressively than necessary. As if redesigning a children's cancer ward to make it less terrifying for patients isn't real impact. I paused, a memory hitting me like a slap. Remember that Christmas when you visited? When I was saving for design school? Mom gave me self-help books about practical careers while Megan got a MacBook. Lisa dropped the packing tape. That's when she said Megan needed it for her banking courses, but you could use the library computers for your design work, right? Even though you were the one actually going to college at the time. Meanwhile, Megan dropped out after 2 years, I added, the old bitterness rising again. But kept the MacBook. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. The bathroom tiles are so dated. Think I'll gut it completely. I installed those tiles myself last summer. I said, showing Lisa the message. Spend my entire savings on the renovation. Italian ceramic, handpicked for the color variations. The contractor said it was some of the finest work he'd seen in years. Screw them, Lisa declared, grabbing her car keys. Come on, we're taking a drive. 20 minutes later, we parked across from my parents' house. The basement tenant's car was gone. They always work late on Thursdays. The colonial-style house looked perfect from the street, as my mother ensured it always did, with no hint of the illegal apartment hidden within. Look, I pointed to the carefully concealed separate entrance. Dad built that himself. No permits, no inspections. The electric meter's rigged too. They tapped into the main house line to avoid having a separate utility account that would show up in property records. Lisa pulled out her phone. Perfect lighting for photos. The housing department will love these. What if I'm going too far? I asked, watching her document everything. The question had plagued me since submitting the complaint. Was I becoming like my mother, calculating, vindictive, willing to hurt others to get what I wanted? Too far? Like when your mother told you art school was a waste but paid Megan's entire college tuition? Or when they promised you could buy the condo but sold it behind your back? Lisa turned to me, her expression serious. They're making their own karma here, Kathy. You're just providing evidence of what they actually did. That's not vindictive, that's justice. My phone rang, the inspector I'd spoken with yesterday. Ms. Miller, Inspector Davis here. Could you verify the exact address for the complaint? We have multiple properties listed under Eleanor Miller's name. I looked at the house where I'd never been good enough, where Megan had been crowned princess while I was told to be practical, realistic, less dramatic. Where my artistic talent was dismissed as a hobby while Megan's mediocrity was celebrated as genius. Yes, I said clearly. It's 347 Maple Street. The entrance is behind the rhododendrons. They've been renting it out for 15 years. Flashback childhood memory. Mummy, look what I drew. I held up my sketch proudly, the blue ribbon from the school art fair still attached to the corner. At 8 years old, I'd spent weeks perfecting my entry, a detailed drawing of our family home with each brick meticulously rendered, each window reflecting tiny clouds I'd smudged into existence with careful fingertips. Mom barely glanced up from her real estate paperwork. That's nice, Catherine. Her dismissal was practiced, perfunctory, a pattern already well established even then. The front door opened, and Megan bounded in, my Aunt Patricia following more slowly. Even at 8, I noticed how tired Aunt Patricia looked, how the cancer treatments had hollowed her cheeks and dulled her once vibrant hair. She'd been fighting breast cancer for 2 years by then, her prognosis growing grimmer with each new treatment. And Eleanor. I got a B+ on my math test, Megan announced, waving the paper triumphantly. She was 6, 2 years younger than me, with a natural charm that adults found irresistible and an uncanny ability to become the center of attention in any room. Mom's face transformed, her smile radiant as she swept Megan into a hug. That's wonderful. I knew you could do it. Robert, did you hear that? Megan got a B+ in math. Dad appeared from his study, smiling indulgently. Good job, Megan. His eyes caught on my ribbon then, widening slightly. Is that from the school art fair, Catherine? What about my ribbon? I asked hopefully, voice small. I won first place. Not now, Catherine. Mom said dismissively, still focused on Megan's test paper. We're celebrating Megan's achievement. The message was clear. My cousin's B+ was more worthy of celebration than my blue ribbon. Dad hesitated, a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, crossing his features before he turned away, retreating back to his study. Even then, his pattern of silent capitulation was forming. Later, I sat on the stairs, forgotten while Mom served Megan's favorite cookies in the kitchen. Through the partially open door, I overheard them talking. You don't need to worry about Megan's future, Mom was saying to Aunt Patricia. Robert and I will make sure she's taken care of, no matter what happens with your treatments. We've already started a college fund for her. My chest tightened. Just last week, I'd overheard Mom telling Dad that my own college fund needed to be repurposed for home renovations. But the will says everything should be divided equally among all the children. Aunt Patricia's voice was weak but concerned. Mother was very clear about that. Catherine should receive the same advantages. Don't worry about legal details. Mom responded, her tone taking on the brisk efficiency she used when brokering difficult real estate deals. I'll handle everything. Just focus on getting better. I didn't understand then what they were discussing. It would be decades before I realized what my mother had promised and how she manipulated things after Aunt Patricia died. That night, I added to my secret sketchbook drawings I never showed my mother, knowing they'd receive nothing but dismissal. In careful, determined strokes, I drew Aunt Patricia as I remembered her before the cancer. Laughing, vibrant, her arm around me as she praised my earliest artistic efforts. You have a gift, Catherine, she told me once. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. It would be years before I fully understood why my mother seemed to resent that gift so deeply, and how she would spend decades trying to extinguish it. The letter discovery present day. After hanging up with Inspector Davis, another memory surfaced. My 16th birthday, watching Megan open my gifts first because she's visiting. Mom beaming as Megan tried on the art supplies I'd hinted at for months. You never needed fancy materials, Mom had said when I got quiet. Megan's just starting to explore her creativity. Lisa touched my arm. You okay? They're about to lose their precious rental income, I said. The fines for unauthorized units start at $50,000. Good, Lisa said firmly. Let them feel what it's like to lose something they count on. A car pulled into my parents' driveway, Mom returning from her tennis game. She looked right at us but didn't wave, her signature pearl earrings catching the sunlight as she turned her head dismissively. Remember what she said when you got that huge hospital design contract last year? Lisa asked. Megan's banking job has benefits, I quoted. Because apparently freelancing with a six-figure income isn't a real career, even after 30 years. My phone lit up with a text from the inspector. Site visit scheduled for next week. The complainant's identity remains confidential. They'll know it was me, I said, a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. The satisfaction of revenge momentarily eclipsed by the reality of what it would mean. So what? They sold your home to their precious Megan. What else can they take from you? Lisa's righteous indignation was comforting. Besides, they broke the law. Multiple laws, from the sound of it. I watched Mom disappear inside, probably planning more ways to prop up Megan's perfect life. The basement lights flickered on. Right on schedule, Marcus returning from his paralegal job, unaware that his illegal housing situation was about to be exposed. You know what Mom told me once? I said, starting the car. She said being harder on me meant I'd survive better than Megan, that I needed to be stronger. Well, Lisa smiled grimly. She's about to find out how strong you've become. Back at the condo, no, at Megan's condo, I reminded myself bitterly. I continued packing. 30 years of accumulated possessions, each object holding memories. The vintage drafting table I'd restored myself. The collection of design books I'd built over decades. The framed poster from my first solo gallery show, when I'd briefly returned to fine art before committing fully to design. Megan had left a Pinterest board taped to my door, ideas for my new home. The heading screamed in glittery pen. I ripped it down, but not before noticing her plans to tear out the garden I'd planted. My phone buzzed, Mom. Megan's designer needs access tomorrow. Be out by noon. I thought about the inspector's photos, the pending investigation, the years of unpermitted rental income about to catch up with them. No problem, I texted back. Just remember what you always told me. Nothing in life is guaranteed. I could almost hear her scoff at my attitude, but soon she'd have bigger problems than my tone. Karma's not a bitch, I told Lisa as she helped me pack the last box. She's just finally paying attention. The next morning, Megan arrived with her interior designer, a nervous young man with an affected accent who kept referring to the tremendous potential of the space once we cleared out all this clutter. My award-winning design work, apparently, qualified as clutter. These walls are so dingy, Megan announced, running her manicured fingers along the freshly painted surface I'd finished just last month. And this light fixture, so basic. I continued wrapping my dishes in newspaper, counting backward from 10. The sooner I packed, the sooner I could escape her impromptu renovation consultation. Oh my God, what's this? She pulled my childhood scrapbook from a shelf. How cute. You kept all this old stuff. Put that down. I reached for it, but she danced away, flipping the pages. Oh, look at these drawings. Remember when you thought you'd be a famous artist? She laughed. Thank God Aunt Eleanor talked sense into you. The scrapbook slipped from her hands, spilling loose papers across the floor. Among them, a yellowed envelope caught my eye, partially burned around the edges. I hadn't seen it in years, had forgotten it was tucked into those pages. Oops, sorry, not sorry, Megan chirped, already distracted by measuring the windows for real curtains, not these cheap things. I waited until she moved to the kitchen before snatching up the envelope. Inside was a letter in my late Aunt Patricia's handwriting, Megan's mother's sister. Dearest Eleanor, it began. I know what you did with Mother's will, how you convinced Robert to help you change the terms after she passed. The properties were meant to be divided equally between all the grandchildren. Catherine deserves her share, just as Megan does. I've spoken with Richard, and he agrees that the letter was cinched there, cutting off mid-sentence. I remembered now finding it in the fireplace when I was 17, rescuing it from the flames when my mother stepped away to answer the phone. I'd hidden it in my sketchbook, then forgotten about it as the years passed and life's other challenges took precedence. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Kathy, it's Uncle Richard. I hadn't heard from Mom's brother in years. They'd had some falling out before Aunt Patricia died. I heard about the condo situation, he said without preamble. History repeating itself, isn't it? What do you mean? Your mother pulled the same trick with your grandmother's will, changed the terms after Patricia died, made everything pass through Robert first. Megan wasn't supposed to get anything special, neither was Eleanor. My hand shook as I held the burned letter. How do you know this? Because Patricia found out. That letter she wrote, the one Eleanor tried to burn, it explains everything. I've been gathering proof for years. In the kitchen, Megan was fast timing her designer. The counters have to go, and that tacky backsplash. I have the letter, I said quietly. It survived. Part of it, anyway. Silence on the line. Then keep it safe. Things are about to get interesting for your mother. After hanging up, I found Megan rearranging my furniture. This layout is all wrong. Good thing you're leaving soon. The real renovations can't start with all your stuff here. The doorbell rang. A courier stood outside with an official-looking envelope addressed to Mom. Wrong address, I said, taking it. I'll take it to her. Whatever, I'm late for brunch anyway. She grabbed her designer bag. Oh, and the painters are coming tomorrow. Hope you're out by then. Once alone, I studied the envelope. City of Boston Housing Department. My hands trembled as I carefully opened it, sliding out the notice. Mandatory inspection, zoning violation report. Failure to comply will result in significant penalties. My phone pinged with Instagram notifications. Megan was already posting photos of my new home renovation journey, featuring my space, tagged as her blank canvas, ready for transformation. The comments were filled with congratulatory messages from people who had no idea this transformation was built on betrayal. I photographed the notice and sealed it back up. Evidence of tampering would only help their case. Walking to my parents' house, I spotted Mrs. Peterson, their next-door neighbor, working in her garden. In her 70s, she'd lived beside my parents for over 30 years and missed nothing that happened on the street. Oh, Kathy, she called, arthritic hands still deftly pruning her roses. Such a shame about your condo. But that basement tenant of theirs finally moved out last night. Couldn't take the noise from the pipes anymore, I heard. I paused. Really? When? Loaded up a U-Haul after dark. Your mother was quite upset this morning. Something about lost rent. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between us, that place was never up to code. My Walter, God rest him, was a building inspector. He would have shut it down in a minute. Perfect timing. The inspection would find an empty illegal unit, no tenant to deny access or complicate things. Mom opened her door before I could knock. What now? Her tone suggested I was an annoying solicitor rather than her daughter. Wrong address, I said, handing over the envelope. Came to my place. I mean Megan's place. She ripped it open, face paling as she read. This is ridiculous. Some mistake. Really? Like the mistake of selling my home without telling me? Don't start, Catherine. Megan deserves a property of her own. That condo was never yours. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Aunt Patricia might disagree. Mom went very still. What are you talking about? Nothing, I said sweetly. Just delivering mail. Family helps family, right? I left her standing in the doorway clutching the notice. Behind her, through the window, I could see Dad frantically making phone calls. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Richard. Lawyers ready when you are. That letter is our smoking gun. Another Instagram notification, Megan posting about manifesting her dreams and deserving nice things. I touched the letter in my pocket. Dreams are about to turn into nightmares, I whispered, walking away from the house where lies had lived for so long. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice rising in panic. Robert, call the contractor now. Flashback the promise. The diamond on my finger caught the light as Tom held my hand across the restaurant table. At 23, I thought I knew what love was, the warm certainty that we would build something beautiful together. To my artistic genius, he toasted, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners. At 25, he was already showing promise as a painter, his abstract work beginning to gain attention in local galleries. To us, I replied, still dazed that this talented, handsome man had chosen me. The next Picasso, and who's a famous female designer? You, he said simply. You'll be the reference point for future generations. When I showed Mom the ring the next day, her response was immediate. At least he has a teaching position, some stability. No congratulations, no joy. Just a grudging acknowledgement that my fiancé had managed to secure part-time work at the community college. We're both artists, Mom, I said, still trying, always trying to make her understand. We're building creative careers. One of you needs a real job, she replied, examining the modest diamond with obvious disappointment. This art phase is fine for now, but eventually. It's not a phase, I interrupted. This is who we are. What I didn't know then was how Tom would gradually abandon his painting. How my mother's constant remarks about real work would chip away at his artistic confidence. How he'd eventually resent my success when his own creative spirit withered. He started teaching full-time, then administration. Each step taking him further from his canvases, deeper into the security my mother valued so highly. You're lucky to have found someone practical, Mom told me on my wedding day, straightening my simple veil with critical fingers. Someone who understands the value of steady income. The irony would take decades to fully unfold. How Mom's pragmatism would poison my marriage from within. How Tom would eventually embody everything she valued. How he would betray me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Tom's last painting hung in our bedroom. Year after year, he'd promised to return to his art when things settled down. Then came the affair with his 28-year-old administrative assistant, his midlife crisis at 55 taking the most predictable form imaginable. The ultimate betrayal wasn't the affair, it was finding our joint accounts emptied the day he left. 30 years of shared finances, gone without discussion. The house I'd paid for with my impractical design business now half empty, his closet cleared out while I was at a client meeting. He'd become exactly the kind of man my mother would approve of. Ruthlessly practical when it came to securing his own future, the unraveling 7 business days. Dad's voice trembled through my phone. They're giving us 7 days to prepare for the housing court hearing. That's unfortunate, I said, watching Megan's latest Instagram story, a champagne toast in my former living room. The furniture I'd carefully selected, some pieces saved for over a decade, pushed carelessly aside to make room for her impromptu celebration. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though I knew the answer. Your mother, she thought maybe you could help, write a letter vouching for us. A letter, I repeated flatly. Stating what, exactly? That the basement was just storage. That we never rented it out. I muted Megan's story mid-celebration. Like how you vouched for me when she sold my home? Like how you supported me all those times she favored Megan? Kathy, please. His voice cracked with age and fear. The fines could bankrupt us. We're not young anymore. Your mother's reputation in the real estate community would be destroyed if people knew she'd been operating an illegal rental for 15 years, that she committed mortgage fraud, that she manipulated a will. The words tumbled out, decades of resentment finding voice. Nothing in life is guaranteed, Dad. Isn't that what Mom always says? A long silence followed, broken only by his labored breathing. I should have stopped her, he said finally, so quietly I almost missed it. Years ago, when she first started changing things. Yes, I agreed. You should have. I was weak. You still are. The truth was harsh but undeniable. You've spent my entire life standing by while she dismissed me, diminished me, diverted opportunities meant for me to Megan instead. You watched it all and did nothing. She's formidable when crossed. So am I, Dad. So am I. Lisa arrived just as I hung up, carrying coffee and a knowing smile. Ready for some reconnaissance? We parked across from my parents' house again, this time with recording equipment borrowed from Lisa's journalism job. Mrs. Peterson was right on schedule, watering her roses despite the gathering clouds that threatened rain. Mrs. Peterson, Lisa called out. Remember me? We met at Kathy's housewarming. The elderly woman brightened. Oh yes, the journalist. Terrible business, that sale. Did you know they're trying to hide that basement apartment? Covering up the entrance with those new bushes they planted yesterday? Lisa's recorder hummed quietly in her pocket. Really? I thought rental units needed proper exits for safety reasons. Oh, it's completely illegal. Mrs. Peterson leaned in, clearly delighted to share her knowledge. Been that way for 15 years. The noise, the extra cars, the separate mailbox they tried to hide behind the fence. My Walter, he was a building inspector before he passed, used to say it was a fire trap waiting to happen. Every word was perfect, exactly what the housing department needed. Lisa kept her talking while I watched Mom pace behind her living room curtains. I could almost feel her anxiety from here, the walls closing in on her carefully constructed life of appearances. My phone buzzed with texts. Megan, having my first dinner party tonight. Too bad you won't be here to see how amazing the place looks. Mom, the inspector called. Please, Kathy. Uncle Richard. Lawyer has the will documents ready when you are. I ignored them all, watching Dad frantically moving items in the basement through the window wells. Too little, too late. Got it, Lisa whispered, stopping the recording. Want to hear? Before I could answer, a city vehicle pulled up. Mom practically ran outside, projecting a calm she clearly didn't feel. Inspector Davis. We weren't expecting you until next week. Preliminary visit, ma'am. Davis adjusted his clipboard. Notice any unusual activity lately? Anonymous tips often spike when tenants move out suddenly. Mom's face went white. I don't know what you mean. Really? Because your neighbor just gave quite a detailed statement about your rental history. I couldn't help it. I walked over, playing innocent. Mom, everything okay? She grabbed my arm, nails digging in. Tell him there's no rental unit. Tell him. Mrs. Miller, Davis interrupted. Attempting to influence witness statements is a separate violation. Witness. Mom's grip loosened. Catherine, what did you do? I smiled, channeling Megan's sugary sweetness. Nothing, Mom. Just helping family. Isn't that what we do? Davis cleared his throat. The formal inspection is still scheduled for next week. I recommend having your lawyer present. As he left, Mom turned on me. You ungrateful little. Everything okay here? Mrs. Peterson called out, still recording everything on her phone. I have such a clear view from my garden. Mom stormed inside. Through the window, I watched her scream at Dad, who was still holding his hammer, looking lost. My phone pinged again. Megan had posted photos of her dinner party. So blessed to have parents who believe in me. Best investment ever. Send me that recording, I told Lisa. The housing department might find it interesting. That night, I sat in my temporary apartment surrounded by boxes, watching Mom's desperate attempts to call me 10 missed calls, 20 texts. The last one caught my eye. We'll lose everything. Is that what you want? I thought about Christmas mornings, watching Megan open the best presents, about art school rejection letters mom had forged in my name, about dad's silence when I begged them not to sell my home, about 3 decades of being told my successes weren't quite good enough. You can't lose what was never really yours. I texted back. My laptop pinged. An email from Davis. Anonymous tip line received audio evidence of long-term rental violations. Fines may be adjusted accordingly. I forwarded mom's threatening text to Uncle Richard's lawyer. Then I opened Instagram one last time. Megan's party was in full swing. My old furniture pushed aside for her designer pieces. To new beginnings, her caption read. So grateful for family who knows what I deserve. I clicked the block button and closed the app. Through my window, I could see the city lights flickering like karma finally waking up. My phone buzzed one last time. Dad. Your mother's talking about selling the house before inspection, please. We can fix this. Nothing to fix, I replied. Family helps family, remember? I'm just following mom's example. Then I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in years. The inspection. The doorbell rang at 8 a.m. sharp. Through my parents' security camera feed, they'd never changed the password. I watched mom smooth her hair and paste on her best social smile. At 78, she still believed her charm could overcome any obstacle, still thought her carefully cultivated community standing would shield her from consequences. Inspector Davis. We weren't expecting you until. Her voice faltered as she saw the additional officials behind him. Surprise inspection, Mrs. Miller. Davis's voice was crisp. Legal requirement when we suspect evidence tampering. Dad appeared behind her, coffee cup shaking in his hand. We were just about to finish covering up the basement entrance. The moment the words left his mouth, I knew he realized his mistake. Mom's expression hardened to granite. Davis gestured to the half-installed lattice work. Step aside, please. I switched to the basement camera. They cleared out most evidence of the rental, but the separate electric meter remained along with years of tenant mail they'd forgotten to remove from behind the water heater. A box of tenant receipts sat in plain view on the counter, Dad's meticulous record-keeping finally working against them. Sir, this is just storage space, Mom insisted, following Davis down the stairs. Her voice took on the patronizing tone she'd perfected over decades in real estate. Many older homes have unusual layouts. Storage space with a kitchen and mail dating back to 2019? He photographed everything methodically. Mr. Miller, care to explain the unauthorized electrical work? Dad's coffee cup clattered to the floor. Eleanor handled all the paperwork. Robert. Mom's voice could have frozen hell. 50 years of marriage distilled into that one word, accusation, command, warning. Mrs. Miller, Davis turned to her. Tampering with electrical systems without permits is a serious violation. Who performed this work? We. Mom looked at Dad, who suddenly found the floor fascinating. The beginning of a crack in their unified front. I did, Dad whispered. Eleanor said we needed the rental income. After she changed the will, Dad added, almost to himself. The dam breaking after decades of silence. Changed what will? Davis asked, his pen poised above his notepad. Mom's hand clamped over Dad's mouth. Nothing. He's confused. Senior moments, you know how it is. But Dad pulled away, something new in his expression, resolve, perhaps, after a lifetime of acquiescence. My wife altered her sister Patricia's will after her death. The properties were supposed to be divided equally among the children. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Richard. Lawyers submitted the inheritance documents. Court date next week. Perfect timing. Davis's voice hardened. Mrs. Miller, we have documented evidence of long-term rental fraud, unauthorized construction, and now possible inheritance tampering. The fines start at $50,000, not including legal penalties. But Megan's condo payment. Mom whispered, her perfectly maintained facade crumbling visibly. What about it? We used the rental income as proof of funds for her mortgage. I nearly dropped my phone. They'd committed mortgage fraud too. That's another department's problem, Davis said, writing furiously. For now, you have 24 hours to disconnect all unauthorized utilities and begin restoration to original condition. But our tenant already moved out. Mom protested, desperation creeping into her voice. Yes, and they've provided a statement. Davis cut her off, along with rent receipts. Through the camera, I watched Mom sink onto the illegal kitchen's counter, her perfect posture finally breaking. For the first time in my life, I saw her truly afraid. My phone lit up with a call from Uncle Richard. It's happening, I told him. The housing inspector just confirmed Dad's statement about the will tampering. Perfect, he said. The lawyer needs you to send that letter immediately. Can you come to my office today? I'll be there in an hour. As I gathered my purse and keys, another text arrived from Megan. The septic system is backing up. The whole condo smells. This is your fault somehow, isn't it? I smiled. The building had city sewer, not septic. Megan's ignorance about basic home maintenance was already causing problems. Karma's funny that way. I texted back before blocking her number. In Uncle Richard's lawyer's office, I handed over Aunt Patricia's partial letter. Will this be enough? Marcus Cohen, a sharp-eyed attorney in his 60s, examined it carefully. Combined with the documentation your uncle has kept and your father's recorded statement to the housing inspector, more than enough. He spread documents across his desk, copies of the original will, bank transfers, property deeds. Your mother altered dates, removed pages, forged signatures. With her real estate background, she knew exactly how to make the changes appear legitimate. And no one questioned it? Uncle Richard shook his head. Your father enabled her. The executor trusted her because of her professional reputation. By the time I realized what had happened, the assets had already been transferred. What happens now? The civil suit will freeze all properties purchased with the diverted funds, including Megan's condo, Marcus explained. The criminal investigation will be separate, but related. Criminal? The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. Will tampering is a felony, Marcus said simply. So is mortgage fraud. My phone buzzed. Mom again. Megan's beside herself. The condo has plumbing issues, and we can't access our accounts to help her. What have you done? I showed Uncle Richard the message. The bank must have frozen their accounts already, he said. That was fast. Too many red flags, Marcus explained. Once the fraud investigation begins, financial institutions act quickly to limit their exposure. I thought of Mom, who had spent decades cultivating an image of perfection, now facing public humiliation. Of Dad, whose quiet complicity had finally caught up with him. Of Megan, whose sense of entitlement was crashing against the hard reality of consequences. Are you sure you want to proceed? Uncle Richard asked, watching me carefully. This will effectively end your relationship with them. I thought about it for a long moment. They ended our relationship years ago. They just didn't bother to tell me. The courtroom. 7 days later, I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching my parents' world collapse in real time. Mom had aged a decade in a week, her carefully maintained appearance showing signs of strain, hair less perfect, makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. Dad looked simply lost, a man who had spent his life following someone else's lead, now facing the consequences of that choice. Megan sat with them, her designer clothes and perfect makeup a jarring contrast to her red-rimmed eyes. She hadn't spoken to me since the plumbing incident, which turned out to be a simple clogged drain that her emergency plumber had charged her $600 to fix. Uncle Richard sat beside me, his expression solemn as the judge reviewed the documentation. Mrs. Miller, Judge Harrington finally spoke, her voice measured but stern. These allegations are exceedingly serious. Will tampering, mortgage fraud, illegal rental income, unauthorized construction, this is not a simple misunderstanding. It was for family. Mom stood up, her voice cracking with emotion I'd rarely seen her display. Everything I did was to protect. To protect who? Uncle Richard interrupted from his seat. My sister Patricia's will was clear. The properties were to be divided equally. You changed that, didn't you? You manipulated everything after she died. Patricia didn't understand, Mom insisted. Megan needed more help. Catherine was always stronger, more independent. I walked forward then, unable to remain silent. Independent because I had to be. Strong because you gave me no choice. Catherine, Mom turned to me, eyes pleading. You have to understand. Megan needed. Needed what? I asked quietly. To be handed everything while I got nothing? To steal my home because you decided she deserved it more? I made you stronger. Mom shouted, her composure finally shattering completely. Everything I did made you independent, while Megan. While Megan what? The judge's voice cut through. Committed mortgage fraud under your guidance? Accepted stolen inheritance? Participated in your deception? Megan burst into tears. I didn't know. I trusted Aunt Eleanor. I can't lose my house. My followers are expecting a renovation series. It was never your house, I said quietly. Just like it was never really mine. It was stolen property. The judge cleared her throat. Given the evidence, I'm freezing all assets pending investigation. Mrs. Miller, you'll need criminal defense counsel. Mortgage fraud alone carries significant penalties. Dad finally spoke up. We used the rental income for Megan's mortgage. Without it, Marcus added, both properties are subject to immediate review for fraud. The paper trail is clear. Mom collapsed into her chair. Catherine, please. We can fix this. I thought about all the times she'd said that. When she lost my art school acceptance letters, when she gave Megan my college fund, when she sold my home without warning. Always her version of fixing meant someone else, usually me, paying the price. No, Mom. You can't fix karma. Megan lunged at me then, her designer bag swinging. You vindictive bitch. You've ruined everything. The bailiff intercepted her as Uncle Richard stood. Should I tell them about Patricia's last conversation with me, Eleanor? How she suspected what you were planning, even before she died. Mom went pale. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, he said. You played favorites until it became fraud. Now you're facing the consequences. The judge banged her gavel. Properties frozen, assets held pending criminal investigation. Next hearing in 30 days. Outside, Megan was having a full meltdown on the courthouse steps, live streaming to her followers about family betrayal. Her carefully curated social media persona cracking under the weight of reality. The bank wants their down payment back, Dad said hollowly as I passed him. We don't have it. You had 15 years of illegal rental income, I reminded him. Where did it all go? Ask your mother, he whispered. She handled everything. Mom stood alone, her perfect image finally shattered. I only wanted what was best for Megan. Never for me, I finished. I made you strong, she insisted, reaching for my arm. Look how well you survive. No, Mom. You made me angry. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. Lisa's sending support from London. Behind me, Marcus was already discussing next steps with Uncle Richard. The criminal investigation starts tomorrow, he told Mom, not unkindly. I suggest you get a lawyer. Megan's wails echoed off the courthouse walls. My followers trusted me. My brand is ruined. I walked away as Mom called after me. Catherine, you can't leave us like this. Watch me, I said, not turning back. Uncle Richard caught up with me at my car. Patricia would be proud of you. She always said you were the strong one. Strong enough to survive them. I nodded. Strong enough to stop them too. A new beginning. The moving truck pulled away from my new apartment, leaving me alone with my boxes and the afternoon sun streaming through windows that were finally legally mine. The down payment had come from Uncle Richard's lawyer, my share of the recovered inheritance plus interest. At 54, I was starting over in many ways. New home, newly single after 30 years of marriage, newly estranged from the family that had shaped so much of my life through their rejection. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in decades. My phone buzzed with Lisa's text from London. Turned on the local news. There was Mom, being led into the courthouse for her arraignment, her tennis whites replaced by a conservative suit, her expression shocked and bewildered. The caption read, Local realtor arrested for multiple fraud charges. The defendant faces up to 10 years. The reporter announced the charges, including will tampering, mortgage fraud, and illegal rental income. The camera panned to Dad, looking small and defeated as he followed his own attorney inside. Another text from Lisa. Megan's condo is listed for sale below market value. I switched to Instagram, where Megan's perfectly curated life had devolved into desperate attempts to rebrand herself after the scandal. Her latest post showed her moving back in with her father. Sometimes you have to rebuild from nothing, but his blessed the karma. The irony wasn't lost on me. The doorbell rang. Uncle Richard, with a housewarming gift. Patricia's old art supplies, he said, setting down a familiar wooden box. Found them in Eleanor's attic. She kept everything she took from you. I opened the box with trembling hands, finding my old brushes, the expensive ones Mom had given Megan all those Christmases ago. Beneath them lay sketches I'd made as a teenager, critiques from art teachers praising my potential, even my original acceptance letter to the Rhode Island School of Design, the one Mom had told me never arrived. She really did plan it all, didn't she? I whispered. Your father confessed everything to avoid charges. Uncle Richard nodded. How Eleanor manipulated the will, used the rental income to fund Megan's lifestyle, forged documents. How she'd been determined from the beginning that Megan would have advantages you didn't. But why? The question that had haunted me for decades. Why favor her over me? Uncle Richard sighed. Patricia was always the golden child when they were growing up. Eleanor was the practical one, the responsible one. Sound familiar? I nodded slowly, understanding dawning. She saw herself in me, and resented it, I think. When Patricia died, Eleanor transferred all that complex emotion to Megan, determined her sister's daughter would have every advantage, while treating you the way she felt treated by their parents. A cycle of resentment, I murmured. One you've broken now, he said gently. Patricia would be proud. My phone lit up, Dad calling. I answered on speaker. The house is being seized, he said quietly. Your mother's facing serious time. Megan's being investigated for her role in the mortgage fraud. I should have stopped this years ago. But you didn't, I replied, my voice steady. You watched them tear me down and said nothing. I know. I'm sorry, Catherine, for everything. He sounded broken, diminished. I always admired your talent, your strength. I was too weak to stand up for you. I didn't respond immediately, letting the weight of his confession hang between us. What happens now? He finally asked. I don't know, Dad. That's up to you. I ended the call without promising reconciliation. Some bridges take time to rebuild, if they can be rebuilt at all. Uncle Richard helped me unpack my art supplies, setting up an easel by the window. Patricia always said you had the real talent. That's why Eleanor worked so hard to suppress it, because Megan needed to be the special one, because you were already special without any of their help. My phone buzzed again. A news alert. Megan's bank was pressing charges for mortgage application fraud. Her perfect life had finally hit its karma debt. Did revenge fix everything? Uncle Richard asked softly. No, I admitted, setting up a fresh canvas. But the truth did. I started painting as he left, creating something new in a space that was truly mine. No more conditional help, no more family loyalty tests, no more watching Megan take what was meant for me. The evening news played in the background, Mom's perfect reputation shattered, Megan's influencer career in ruins, Dad's quiet compliance exposed. Their carefully constructed facade had crumbled under the weight of its own lies. My phone kept lighting up. Mom, the lawyers say I could avoid jail if you speak on my behalf. Megan, my life is over, and it's all your fault. Dad, please just talk to us. I blocked their numbers and opened my laptop instead, checking my design business emails. New clients, fresh projects, opportunities that had nothing to do with family obligations or stolen dreams. A final text from Lisa made me smile. Megan's trying to sell your old furniture to cover legal fees. Karma's got a weird sense of humor. I looked around my new space, smaller than the condo, but mine in every way that mattered. The walls were already filling with my art pieces, the ones Mom had called impractical and Megan had tried to copy. The sunset painted my canvas in shades of justice as I worked, creating something that could never be taken away. Outside, the city hummed with possibilities that had nothing to do with family names or stolen inheritances. My phone lit up one last time. Uncle Richard. Patricia would be proud. You broke the cycle. I texted back. No more family helping family. No, he replied. Just truth finally helping truth. I turned back to my painting, adding colors that Mom would have hated and Megan would have tried to claim. In the distance, sirens wailed, probably another piece of their perfect world falling apart. But here in my space, with my art and my truth, nothing could be stolen anymore. No more conditional love. No more forced gratitude. No more watching Megan receive what was meant for me. Sometimes karma doesn't fix everything, but sometimes she gives you a clean canvas and says, now show them what you can really do. I picked up my brush and began to paint my own future.